So linear function, we're going to be talking about a line. That's where the word linear comes from. If you're more familiar with that, keep in mind that linea in Spanish means line. The only thing that we're doing is adding an R to it. Now, a function tells you that for one input, there's only one output. So that's what we're trying to do. There's going to be only one point for every single input. So our linear functions for sure are going to be a straight line when we graph it. So in a Cartesian plane, in the xy coordinate, you're just going to have a straight line. Now, a linear function will look like a line when you graph it, but at the same time, there are other ways that you are going to show a linear function. Another way that you can show a linear function is through a table. When you have a table, what you need to do is try to find the unit rate, so the rate of change. So we are going to see how much is increasing by. So from -1 to 0, it's increasing by 1. From 0 to 1 is going to be increasing by 1. And from 1 to 2 is increasing by 1. So in this case, the x are increasing through our same rate of change. Now, if we're paying attention to the y values, we have -2 goes to 0, so we know that it's increasing by 2. Now from 0 to 2, it's increasing by 2, and from 2 to 4, it's increasing by 2. When you were learning about proportional relationship, you knew that you were looking for a constant of proportionality, a ratio, a rate. Now, that ratio, that rate, that constant of proportionality is going to be what we call our slope. Okay? It's the same idea, just a different word. Another way that you can also see a linear function is in the form of an equation. In this case, we have y equals 2x plus 1. That is a linear function. Now, when we have a graph, it is easy to tell when we have a linear function. The only thing you need to make sure is that you have a straight line. When you have a table, the only thing that you need to make sure is you have a constant rate, a constant slope. And that's the only thing that you need to do to figure out if it's what is a slope, and that determines whether it's linear or not. Now, whenever you're dealing with an equation can be tricky. Okay, because the linear functions actually have a specific way they need to be written. For the equation, we actually want to have the equation y equals mx plus b. Now we have y and x being variables, and we are going to be using m and b as constant. I mean that they're going to be a number, a set of numbers. So let's actually learn about the equation. So whenever you have a linear function, it's going to look in the form y equals mx plus b. The m represents your slope, and your b represents your y-intercept. That means the point where the line crosses the y-axis, the vertical axis. So an example of a linear function will be y equals 3x plus 1, y equals 1/2 x, and y equals 4. So those are 3 different examples of linear functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify the slope and y-intercept for each and every one of them. So we're going to start with the first one. The slope will be the number that is next to the x. That will be the number that you need. So your slope is going to be 3 in this case, and your y-intercept will be 1. For the next one, once again, you're paying attention to the number next to the variable. So we have 1/2. That will be your slope. So we're going to write m equals 1/2. In this case, we have y equals 1/2 x. So this will be your slope. Now, there's nothing next to the x. So that means that your y-intercept is going to be 0. 0 is the quantity that explains nothing, right? Now, for the last one, in this case, you don't have an x. You only have a regular number, a constant. Whenever you have a number by itself, you automatically know that that's going to be your y-intercept. So we're going to call that b. So we know that b is going to be equal to 4, and your slope is going to be 0. Because 0 times x gives you 0. So m is a letter that we use for slope, which is your unit rate, which is a rate or the rate of change. So whenever the book tells you find the unit rate, find a rate, find a rate of change, you're going to be paying attention to the slope. Whenever they talk about initial value, you're actually going to be dealing with the y-intercept, which is the letter b. This is going to help you when you're trying to put a table, a graph, a word problem into an equation. Right, so let's see how to put it into an equation when they give you the slope and the y-intercept. So the first thing that you need to do is write your formula. Y equals mx plus b. And the next thing that you're going to do is just substitute. So we know that m equals 0.75. So wherever you see the m, you're going to put in 0.75. Plus, we know that our b equals 3. So the only thing we're going to do is put 3. And that is the equation of that line. Let's try one more time, but now we have a negative number. So we have y equals mx plus b. One more time. And we're going to write it as y equals, in this case, I'm going to leave a space for what I'm missing. We know that our slope is 4, so I'm going to put 4. And then we know that our y-intercept is -5. Now, in this case, you have a plus and a minus, and I don't like how that looks like. So I'm going to rewrite it as y equals 4x minus 5. And that will be your answer. Remember, whenever you have a positive and a negative, it gives you a negative. So we're going to keep a minus sign there. All right, so if you are given a graph like the one that you have on the left side, it says homework SOS. Now, to find the equation of that line, what we're going to do is we're going to find the slope and also the initial value. So the initial value for a graph is where it begins or wherever it crosses the y-axis. So in this case, we are going to go to the axis. This is the y-axis, and we see what value that is. So right here, you see that that point is 10. So the only thing that you're going to do is write b equals 10. And you're done with this initial value. Now, the next thing that you need to do is find the slope. The slope is going to be equal to the rise over run. So you need to figure out how much does it go up or how much does it go down, and you're going to divide that by how much it moves to the right. All right? So in this case, we see that 10 goes up 5 units. From 10 to 15, it went up 5 units. And then you're going to see how much it moved to the right. So to find that number, the only thing we need to do is we look at 10 and it moved 10 to the right. So our point here is going to be 15 and 10. So we move 10 to the right and we write 10 underneath. That's going to be 1.5. That will be your slope. Now that we have the slope and the y-intercept, the only thing that we're going to do is put it in an equation. So it's going to be y equals mx plus b. We are going to substitute, and we have y equals 1/2 x plus 10.